Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Dhamma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Chapita, Tvameva, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Tvameva, Tvameva Vedya Dravinam, Tvameva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So we're continuing our section on Shankara's take, frankly, a polemic on the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. Most specifically, he was probably aware of the Vyasa Bhashya, commentary by Vyasa. This is not Veda Vyasa, this is another Vyasa. Could very likely have been a contemporary commentary of Shankara. We don't know. So rather than the classic 8 limbs that we think of today, the Ashtanga Yoga, Shankara slices it up to 15 sections. And we've covered some of the basics, yamas and niyamas, asana. I think we covered pranayama. We had the addition of maunam, silence. What verse are we on? I can't remember where we frankly left off, Aditi.
We're on 116.
So let's start there and see what Shankara has to offer us.
Drishtim jnanamayam kritva pashyeda brahmamayam jagat sadrishti paramodara nanasagravalokini. Raising the ordinary gross vision into the subtle vision of knowledge, one should learn to see the world as pure consciousness, Brahman. That is the noblest of visions, and not that which is turned up towards the tip of one's own nose.
So we have all these various meditative techniques that we get in the Vyasa commentary or other yogis say. We even have the one in Gita, where you're supposed to focus your attention on the tip of the nose. This is all in truth metaphor. If you read the Pandit Rajmani commentary on the Yoga Sutra, he spends all this time talking about the space of the soft palate and focusing on the third eye and the space of the heart and up to the crown chakra. Do all of you remember those sections? Do you remember those, Scott?
Yes.
Yes. So here Shankara says, that's not where we really should be focusing. It's okay. It's okay for those with gross minds who need that kind of technical work. But where is it that we should place our vision? Not on the third eye, not on the tip of the nose. I know back in the 70s, everybody who was going to the Siddha Yoga ashram with Baba Muktananda, and after he passed away for Guru Mai, have you seen the blue pearl? Be in meditation and see the blue pearl. Shankara reminds us, if you can see it, if you can know it, if it is cognizable, if it has form, if it has qualities, that isn't it. And vision here is a metaphor. Vision here doesn't mean just something I perceive with my physical eyes or even with my imagination. It means a deep and profound understanding. You may have been exposed to the word in Pali, vipassana, call it insight meditation. The Sanskrit would be vipassana, from the root drish pashyati, to see, vipassana. That's superlative, to have profound or transcendental sight, insight. So, koham, who am I? Not the body, not the mind, not the intellect. Not even going to worry about my sanskaras and vasanas. Koham. Remember, you will never see yourself as an object. Yet, you know you are. So that profound insight in the subtle intellect. Oh, I'm not a person. I'm not some individuality. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. What is the nature of Brahman? Prajnanam Brahma. Brahman is conscious. Now, does that mean we shouldn't do these meditations that are in Yoga Sutra? If you are drawn to them and you are yet to have a subtle enough mind to be able to have at least these glimpses, you can drop the mind and notice the knower. Knock yourself out. All those are preparatory practices. It's a place to park your mind. Any thoughts on this before we go on? Next verse.
Drishtir darshana drishyanam viramo yatra va bhavet drishtis tatreva kartavya nana sagra valokini. Or one should turn one's vision or attention dutifully to that alone, where the separateness of the seer-seen seeing ceases, and not to the tip of one's own nose.
Yes. So again, he goes on to it. If you cannot perceive that all this phenomenal world is nothing but Brahman, that was in the prior verse. Again, how do we understand this? The three great questions we need to deal with. Who am I? What is this world? How has it come about? Who am I? I am Atma, Brahma. This self is Brahman. What is this world? Jagan Mithya. This world is an illusion. It's just nama rupa, name and form appearing in the field of awareness. No big. How has it come about? Spontaneously out of consciousness by means of sankalpa, by the Maya Shakti of the infinite. All this appears. So here he says, prior verse, focus on seeing the self in and through all the objects. This verse, turning the mind inward. Who am I? You need both. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Chitta sarva bhaveshu brahmatve neva bhavanat nirodha sarva vrittinam pranayama sa uchyate. To quieten all thought disturbances, chitta, by realizing them as nothing but ripples in the supreme consciousness, and thus that they are all Brahman, is true pranayama.
So, what is pranayama as it occurs in Yoga Sutra? Prana is not breath. First of all, let's get that clear. Prana is the vital force, the energy. And we have it divided into the Panchavayu, the 5 subsidiary pranas: inhalation, exhalation or elimination, circulation, digestion, and udana, thinking. And in Raja Yoga, in the Yoga Sutra, the practices, you can control these energies by controlling the breath. So a combination of breathing exercises, moving energy around. But in the end, the pranamaya kosha, the vital air sheath, is anatman. It's not self. And people can get all hung up, huffing and puffing and huffing and puffing. And they get an ecstatic experience. That's what we call a jada samadhi. Jada means inert. It feels good, it's blissed out. but there's no knowledge, there's no understanding, and there's no freedom. And the idea is if you do pranayama and Raja Yoga, you will be able to have some control. You'll have the nirodha. I think that's the word that they used. The binding back or the restraining of the mind. The best restraining of the mind is to see it for what it is. Fundamentally is. Do I need to build a seawall, a dike, in order to hold back the waters of the mirage? To see the mirage for what it is keeps it from flooding me. The best restraint of the mind is to understand I can't think a real thought. Just go by. Don't give them power. Don't feed them with your belief. Any thoughts on this? What about the thoughts of Vedanta? Are those real? No. But it's a way of thinking that gets us out of our thinking. That's its intention. Shankara will use the example, you've got a thorn in your finger. So you take another thorn to get that thorn out. But then you cast them both away. Next one.
Nishedhanam prapanchasya rechakakhya samiranaha brahmevasmiti ya vritti purako vayuriritaha. It's 2 verses actually. That's the dvitineshalyam kumbhaka prana sanyamaha ayam chapi prabadhanam jnanam kharna pindanam. The negation of the world of plurality is to be considered as rechaka, breathing out. Continuous thought of I am Brahman is called puraka, breathing in, and the steadiness in that thought thereafter is called kumbhaka, holding the breath within. This is true pranayama to the wise, while the ignorant merely tortures his nose.
So in the Yoga Sutra and its commentary, you get specific practices of pranayama. So you can have rechaka, where like one of the ones I remember is alternate nostril breathing. You breathe in through one nostril. Rechaka, that you hold it. Kumbhaka. Puraka, breathe out with the other one, etc. Torturing the nose. What will this do? It actually will slow your mind down, lower your blood pressure too. If you ever have issues with blood pressure, you can do a little bit of pranayama to lower your blood pressure. I'm not saying it's not of value. In fact, I think it has value. It has value in slowing down the mind. It has value in energizing and opening up the channels in the nervous system. Because as we meditate, a lot of energy is released. But it's very much a beginner's practice. Here Shankara says the best Rechaka, breathing out. Passed off the word. The best, what is it? Puraka? Yes. Breathing in. So and the best kumbhaka, stoppage of the breath, is the stoppage of your mind. Now, practically speaking, for many of us, the first experience we may have of that interval between thoughts can be with the breath. Can you find that still point, that suspended moment between the inhale and exhale, or between the exhale? But ultimately, withdraw your attention from the breath itself. It's a very gross meditation. Any thoughts on this? Torturing the nose, that's funny. Next one.
Vishayeshvatmatam drishtva manasashiti majjanam pratyaharam savigyeyo naniyut mumukshabhi. To dissolve the mind in the consciousness, knowing the expression of oneself in all the objects, is known as Pratyahar. This should be practiced by all the seekers diligently.
Yes. So Pratyahara in the Raja Yoga tradition is the same as Uparati that we find in the qualifications of a fit student. It means sense withdrawal. The classic metaphor is of a tortoise or a turtle, which has its head and four limbs, the five limbs, and the tortoise or the turtle is able to go and pull everything inside its shell. So for the meditator, you need to be able to not be distracted by the external world. There are people who get all upset. Oh, I can't meditate in Oakland. It's too noisy. I can't meditate here because, my roommates are walking around. This is nonsense. Now, many of us have this capacity, we don't even know it. So I've always been a lover of reading. In many ways, it was my first escape from the world as a child. Did you ever have the experience? Maybe you do today. You've got a really good book and you're engrossed in it. Maybe your mother would say, dinner time. You didn't even hear it. Or you're married and you're engaged in a book and your spouse says, honey, will you blah, 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 blah. You don't even hear it. So actually the key to effective pratyahara or uparati, they mean the same thing, is a real focus on something internal. Now, we not only need to be able to withdraw our attention from the knowable, but Shankara in Vivekachudamani says the best uparati is when you can function in the world and the sense objects do not create any waves. In other places, he will use the metaphor of a wicker basket, pouring water into a wicker basket. The water just pours through. Or if you're rinsing rice or lentils and you've got them in a colander, the water just pours through. So what we want to do is, as we're functioning in the world, whatever information comes at us, most especially speech, be empty. Don't let it land. Just let it go through. Now, listen carefully. Most people are very willing to want to renounce their attachment to insult, criticism, etc. And it's absolutely hard to do. Why? Because we do not want to let go of our attachment to the praise and the ego strokes. Where we usually get identified is on the positive side. So if someone says, oh, Michael, you're such a handsome man. Oh, yeah. Or Mark, you're so smart. Oh, man, what a towering intellect. You want to go, oh, yeah. Or Aditi, you're kind. You're generous. You're so full of compassion. We just suck it up, don't we? But then when the opposite happens, nah, I wouldn't want to hook up with you. You're a troll. Or what a stupid thing to do. Or how could you be so mean? It's too late. We're already identified. How could they have said that to me? Is that what we do? So we have to be empty. Whatever comes toward us, let it pass through. This is the best. Pratyahara, sense withdrawal. Or what it, sense withdrawal. Any questions on this practice? Now, the psychologists will give us a practice that in the end doesn't work. They call it reframing. Aditi, define reframing for us. You're the mental health professional.
When somebody has a particular thought or feeling and the therapist provides a different way to view it, a different way to think about it.
Can you give us a concrete example? I'll give you one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a friend criticizes you and is really angry at you, and you feel like you didn't do anything. And then the therapist will say, well, have you thought that perhaps they were having a bad day? That it may not have been about you at all. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. Is that a good example?
Yeah.
So the first one, I took it on. How could they have hurt my feelings? Second one, by changing the narrative, by changing the frame. Well, I'm okay, they're wrong. Or the story has a different frame, which makes my ego feel okay. Do you get that? I'm still an okay person. That's called reframing. That's what the psychologists tell us to do, to try to preserve and protect self-esteem, our ego. Yoga says, okay, you can do that, but it is not a pathway to freedom. It's just a pathway to temporarily feel better about your ego. I didn't lose the election. I really won. Reframing. All it is. All it is. Yoga says you're neither good nor bad. You're not a winner or a loser. Be empty. Shunya. This is the best. Incredibly important practice. Any questions about this? All right, next one.
Yatra yatra mano yati brahmanastatra darshanat manaso dharanam cheva dharana sa paramata. Having the vision of Brahman on whatever object the mind may fall, to steady the mind there is known as dharana, and this is the highest concentration.
Yes. So after we have the normal 8 limbs, yamas, niyamas, the restraints, the do's and don'ts of our ethical behavior. Asana, posture, doing your yoga postures. Then pranayama, control of the vital energy through control of the breath. Then pratyahara, sense withdrawal. Then comes dharana, concentration. learning how to bring the mind to a single point. Now again, at a particular level of our practice, it can be of value. Swamiji used to talk about when he was a kid. The family Ishtadevata was Lord Shiva, and he would spend time looking at the murti, looking at the idol. And then in his meditation, he would try to see how clearly he could visualize Lord Shiva. So he could be single pointed and concentrated on that. This is dharana. Or if you're doing japa, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. I wonder where I'm going to go for lunch today. Om Shivaya. I wonder if Guru Curry House is open. Oh, if we go to Guru Curry House, do I want to have the mushroom tikka masala, maybe some aloo gobi? Oh, Namah Shivaya. Doesn't your mind do that kind of stuff when you're meditating? Huh? Yeah. So dharana is the constant practice to bring it back to whatever our point of concentration is. It's a valuable technique. Ideally, we want to get the point where even when we're functioning in the world, Swamiji used to say, put your mind where your hands are working. When you're folding laundry, you're doing nothing but folding laundry. Why do I have to do this? Why can't I just stuff it in the drawer? Does your mind do that? When you're cleaning the house, okay, like, what am I going to do next week? You're not even paying attention to what you're doing. Then you get to the point, if you're not attentive when you get a little bit older, did I take my medicine this morning or not? Do you have that one, Mark? Don't even know what you did because you were so not present. So there's value in dharana, becoming single pointed, being able to concentrate. I think this is perhaps one of the most important practices to deal with people who have attention deficit disorder. Rather than taking pills, teach them to meditate. My opinion. But here Shankara lifts the practice to a higher level. There's a wonderful little book in the Christian tradition called The Practice of the Presence by Brother Lawrence. Has anyone read this? Anybody in Zoom land?
No.
Very simple little book. And his entire practice would be, what would I be doing? What would I be saying? What would I be thinking if the Master were right next to me? He, of course, means Jesus. But you can do it any way you want. If Lord Krishna were right next to you, or if Swamiji were right next to you, if Ramana Maharshi were right next to you. How would you think? How would you act? How would you speak? Wonderful practice. Then the other thing that Shankara is implying is, can you see everyone and everything as Brahman? The conscious being looking out of everyone's eyes. That is Brahman. What about this body, mind, intellect? Just a suit of clothes, acting out according to the force of its past. Not important. That's Nama. This was the Christian Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta's practice, to see the face of Christ in everyone, most especially the poorest of the poor, the most wretched of the wretched, the smelliest of the smelly. There's so this constant attention, endeavor to see the divine. My favorite Mahavakyas. It's not one of the great four. Sarvam Kalvidam from Chandogya. Sarvam Idam, all this. Kalu, verily is Brahman. All this. That's the highest dharana, the highest concentration. Any thoughts? Did you have one, Michael? No. All right, next one.
Brahmaivasmiti sadvritya niralamba taya sthitihi dhyana shabdena vikhyata paramanandadayini. By constant knowledge that I am Brahman, not to rest on anything for any support, is known by the term dhyana, and this is the bestower of supreme bliss.
So dhyana just means meditation. That's all it means. And there are many practices of meditation. So here he says the best meditation. Who am I? What is my nature? Brahman. I am not the personal sense of self. I am that Chidakash, that space of pure awareness. All this world is just the play of consciousness. No big deal. Practically speaking, in my meditation scenes, perhaps I'll do some practice to get the mind quiet. Could be japa, could be being with the breath. What was the Tibetan one you were so interested in? Zo something or other?
Shamatha. Well,
The
Dzogchen's the.
Say it again.
Shamatha is the technique. The school is Dzogchen.
Okay. I don't know if you heard that in Zoom, but it's a meditation connected with the breath. All of those are just techniques to bring the mind into quiescence. Then in that silence between thoughts, who is it who sees both the thoughts, both the technique and the silence? If your mind stops, drop the technique. If your mind starts up again, I should have used a different word. When your mind starts up again, you can use a technique. You don't want to distract yourself from abidance in the self with the noisiness of a meditative technique. I remember talking with a student, and he was saying, I had the assignment of I had to do, 1,008 repetitions of my mantra. I have to count them. I'm doing very well in meditation. I got through 1,008 repetitions. That's a really gross form of meditation. The object of meditation is just a place to park your mind. So when thoughts and feelings arise, you don't get caught up in stories. Bring it back. But as the mind gets quiet, let go. The paradigm we find in Yoga Sutra, in the first volume, in the Samadhi Pada, the Samadhi Prakara, and I can't exactly remember what he titles that first chapter. He'll talk about simply there's Prakasha, it really means light. Here he means the light of pure awareness, and Vimarsha, deliberation, thoughting. That comprises the mind. The awareness of thought flow. Akasha, Vimarsha. All we need to do is let go of the deliberation, the vrittis. And what's left is the light of pure awareness. Any thoughts on this? All right, next one.
Nirvikarataya vritya brahmakarataya punaha vritti vismaranam samyak samadhir jnana sangyakaha. Because of one idea that everything is Brahman, to have no other modification and to dissolve all thoughts is known as Samadhi, which is a state of mindlessness.
Yes. So, Samadhi, many different etymologies. My favorite is Sama, same, the mind. Absolute essence of mind. Here he says nirvikara. Same as nirvikalpa. Absolute quiescence of mind without any mental perturbation. This is termed samadhi. Why is samadhi necessary? Oh, this is a very interesting question. There are schools of Advaita Vedanta who say samadhi is not necessary for self-realization. I can only tell you out of my own direct experience. Swamiji would always teach Vivekachudamani himself. Brahmachari training course would be going on. At the end of the course, all the brahmacharis would come up to Siddhabari, and then delegates from all over the world would come, and he would teach that text himself. I had the great fortune and blessing to study it with him in 1988. Shankara says, practice samadhi. Swamiji certainly had a very deep samadhi. You just get around. You learned how to tune up to it. Say, meet me there. It was just so empty. The thunder of silence. Why is samadhi useful? Because for most of us, until we have a direct experience of the disappearance of the personal sense of self, the mind won't let go of its belief that I'm a person. We need to have the direct experience of the disappearance of the mind. Going back to Swamiji's spiritual algebra, mind, M, equals A, awareness, plus, we'll use the word from Yoga Sutra, vimarsha, V. Sometimes I'll do TF, thought flow. Mind equals A plus V. The awareness of vimarsha. You take the vimarsha and you move it to the other side of the equal sign. You got to make it minus. Mind minus the flow of thought equals pure awareness. is Samadhi. Practically speaking. This place, who am I? Notice the knowing. There's nothing there. Can you find a self, an individual self? Now, I was talking with someone this week, and I told them about the demon Yevat. Yevat is a demon that will rip off your samadhi. Mind is stopped. And then Yevat, the demon, will come up and say, yeah, but Jim, is it like this? Or when I'm in practice, this happens. It doesn't mean, sometimes I have this, and there's this experience here. Like I want to concretize, figure it out, solidify it. I, Jim, want to know. Kill that demon. Mind is stopped. Evil. Now, the samadhi of the Vedantas, because they have what's known as Aparokshanubhuti, indirect knowledge, an understanding that's gained from the scripture and from the teacher. When they have the Aparokshanubhuti, oh, that's the name of the book. The direct experience. Then when the mind returns from that, I get these flashes. Yeah, I get it now. There's no one there. This is the aha in the subliminal. The Pratyahar, the recognition. Now let that go. Just alive. Bliss of your own self nature. Next one.
Imancha kritrimanandam tavat sadhu samabhyastet Vashyo yatakshanat punsaha prayukta sanabhavetasvam swayam. This One should practice constantly until one gets full control over oneself, and thus will be able to enter into that blemishless bliss in an instant at will.
Yeah. So, let me just again share with you my journey. The beginning, when I first met Swamiji, God, like being on acid, lights, that kind of went away. Heard the teaching. There's all this energy coming. It's karmic to a large degree. And gradually I learned to tune up to him. He'd go away. And I was back to my ordinary stupid mind. And he taught me, use the Guru. Doesn't matter if he's off in India or Australia. All I have to do is think about it. Tune up to it. After a while, whenever I would go to a camp, as soon as I would arrive, oh, Swamiji's here, I can feel it. And when he'd leave, I'd go back home to much as I could, all as I could. This burns millions of us. And I realized he fooled me. It wasn't him, it's myself. So Michael is here in my living room. I can feel it. It's incredible thunder of the silence. Can you feel it?
Yes.
Meet Swamiji. And it's yourself. It is the mind reveling itself. We have these beautiful words in Sanskrit. One of my favorites is Brahmananda Rasa. Rasa means juice. You got to think of like a mango. You just squeeze it and the rasa comes out. Juice or nectar, the nectar of the bliss of Brahman. The other one that Shankara will use is Atmanamana, to revel in the bliss of Brahman. Because the self is bliss absolute, Satchitananda. When the mind is yoked to the self, we call that yoga. The mind is bliss. So the yogi needs to have dominion over. Don't want to be attached to it per se. We need to own it. Why is it important to have samadhi and to own it? Because the mind is a pleasure seeker, pain avoider mechanism. That's what it does. From the moment you get up in the morning to the moment your head hits the pillow at night, all the mind is doing is seeking the good by its understanding of it and avoiding misery. Everything you do all day long is for that purpose. Don't believe me. Pay attention to your behavior. What are you doing and why are you doing it? Even if you're being altruistic, you're doing it because you think it's for the good. So the only real doubt is, where is the good? If the yogi does not have samadhi, you may have an intellectual understanding of this, but your mind will continue to seriously play with the world. Oh, I know that the self is bliss absolute. But cheesecake is where it's really at. Does that make sense? And we can feel it when we're around a person of mature biology. They may look like they're acting in the world like an ordinary person. They go to lunch. They may see a concert. But you can feel that there's no hunger, no drive for the and you can be around someone who can have all the God talk in the world. You can feel it if they're jonesing for stuff. Shankara is very clear in Vivekachudana. The mind still extroverts into the world. There should be no talk of liberation. Any thoughts on this? All right, this is a good place to stop. What verse are we on, Aditi?
We just finished 125, so we'll start on 126 next time.
And we've got a total of 144.
Yes.
And how many did we do today? Just so I kind of get a sense.
We did 10 today.
Okay, so we've got about 20 more to do, so maybe 2-3 weeks. So I'm keen on doing Ashtavakra Gita. I can buy a bunch of them at wholesale. And then for you, Scott, I think you can probably get it either directly through Chinmaya Publications, and it might be less expensive, or online on Amazon. I will send you a link of the edition that we're going to use. Will that work?
Yes, please. The sooner the better, because it takes a while for me to get it.
I'll do it today. I'll do it as soon as we finish class.
Okay, thank you.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim.
Enjoy torturing your noses.
Thank you, Jim.
Hariom.
Hariom.